My name is Rosie Goldsmith and welcome to my Riveting interview series, conversations with authors from all over the world. My nickname is Rosie the Riveter, and one of my great passions is introducing readers to riveting writers. You may already know The Riveter, our magazine of international writing, as well as our online Riveting reviews and Riveting reads. They're all dedicated to giving foreign writers in English translation the prominence they deserve, which is exactly what I want to do with this series of riveting audio and video interviews. They're all free via our website, eurolitnetwork.com. Welcome to today's Riveting Author. Today we're in the Romanian Cultural Institute in London, and today I'd like to introduce you to Ioana Pârvulescu. Now, Ioana is an historian, she's an academic, professor of literature, she's an archaeologist, she's a novelist, she's a translator, and she is a time traveller. Now, what do you mean about time traveller?
You said I'm an archaeologist. I'm not. I wanted to be. It's true. It was my first choice, archaeology, but I couldn't study that because it was in the Faculty of History, and during the communist period it was not a good choice to study history in Romania. But I'm aware I do archaeology through my writings, through my books. I always do researches into the past.
I remember when I met you a few years ago, I remember that phrase, time traveller. Yes. And I remember you saying that you felt through your novels that you were able to travel through time, your novels and of course your essays and so on. You've written many books. Is this still how you feel about writing?
About writing and about life. If I could meet the golden fish, I would say I want to travel in time, not to remain somewhere, but to travel through the time, back in the time, not in the future. I'm a little bit afraid of the future. And yes, it's something that I can do only through my books.
Why do you want to travel back in time?
For me, it's not enough to live the life I live. You have so many lives as books you read or write. I need to make some new experiences, and I'm very curious. Not nostalgia, but curiosity was my engine to these travelings.
Tell me about growing up in Brașov and what that region means to you.
Brașov is really a wonderful town. It's actually full of tourists. Brașov was a trader's city, very tolerant, very open. And what I like about that is saying that is an old saying that says in Brașov even the dogs bark in 3 languages at least.
Do you think it's growing up in Brașov that gave you your love of languages and translation and writing?
I think so. Maybe it's also from my family. My grandpa said you are so many times a human being as languages you know.
But you translate from French and German and English.
English I just began with a book, a child book, so it's my first one.
You've translated A.A. Milne when we were very young into Romanian. The first time.
I believe it's the first time. I don't know if another version exists, but I believe not, because I love Milne very much, and it's one of my favorite authors. I translated Asterix, for example.
Asterix, wonderful.
Asterix. So now Milne, it's my last translation. Let's hope not my last, but my most recent translation. Then I translated Angelus Silesius, that's poetry from German. Then I translated Milan Kundera, a novel from him. I translated Maurice Nadeau, memoirs.
It seems to me that there are many translations being made for the very first time into Romanian. So a lot of books are arriving in Romania for the first time thanks to translators. So you're catching up.
Yes, translators are very important, and there were many forbidden books. We couldn't read these books just, I don't know, without
the censor.
And after 90, a lot of books were translated. These great authors from France, for example, Cioran, we pronounce it.
Mircea Eliade.
And Eugene Ionesco.
Some very, very great writers. Was it an exciting time to read all these writers?
It was a great time.
Yeah. Suddenly they were available to you.
It was one of the greatest time I lived, because we were aware how lucky we are to read that and to have access to everything, to cross the border, to discover the world, actually.
In December 1989, I went to Romania for the BBC, and it was the most shocking but also very exciting time for me. And I realised what suffering so many Romanians had undergone. That's 30 years ago this year. What were you doing in December 1989? Where were you? Were you in Brașov or were you in Bucharest?
I was in Brașov, and I think from the social point of view, it was the best day of my life. You could say anything, and everyone was happy then. After that, it was not the same, but in that moment, everyone was happy. Suddenly, everything was like in another world.
And were you already writing your own fiction and essays and poetry?
I was a teacher to a school somewhere near Bucharest, and I had to commute every day, even Saturday, because Saturday was not free in those times. I wrote, but just for myself. I had no possibility to publish. I didn't publish these novels until now.
Well, the first novel, Life Begins on Friday, you wrote 10 years ago in 2009. That was published in Romanian and was only published a few years ago in English. And it's still the only novel that's been translated into English. And considering how much you've written, that's terrible, really.
I wrote just 3 novels.
But you've written a lot of other books.
Yes, the other books are essays or literary critic or criticism or poetry even. My successful books were about day-to-day life in the 19th century, during the interwar and in the communism time.
So that period in Romania, in Bucharest specifically, the Belle Epoque, which you obviously adore, you've put that into several books. Why do you like that period so much?
It was really the best world I know. And I know that for sure because I read a lot of things. I read diaries, I read letters, I read journals, and not just history. History is cold, history is distant, history makes synopsis. I read these little things that show you how the real world was. I chose that period after a tragedy in my family, And I built this universe for some person who died. So I would not do that if I couldn't believe that this is the best period of time ever.
So Bucharest was the main character in that novel, Life Begins on Friday, and Bucharest remains one of your favourite characters.
Yes, I love also Brașov, as you know, but Bucharest is a warm city, and you never get bored in this city. It's very vivid, it's very colorful, and people are open, and in Brașov people are more distant, more sober, but in Bucharest they are cheerful and they are very open-hearted and well.
Is it a good time to be a writer in Romania now?
Yes, a very good time. It's actually a kind of explosion of novels, of poetry also. Okay, they say the Romanian people are naturally born poets. That's a saying from the 19th century. And it is, everyone writes poetry or novels, and they publish very much.
Ioana, one thing I notice very much about your writing and the short stories I've read and the sample translations and the novel, Life Begins on Friday, is that you have this desire to escape. And you also have a desire to show the beauty in life and the positive aspects of life.
I try to make joy with my books. I think life itself has so many difficult parts. We're getting old, we have disease, we have a lot of problems, and that's enough. You don't have to highlight every bad thing in life, but the positive characters are the most difficult to realize for a writer. Just Dostoevsky did it. I am not Dostoevsky, but I try hard to have also positive characters.
See, your latest novel, which is a bestseller in Romania, came out in 2018, and it's called The Innocence, and it's an autobiographical novel, and the main character is a little girl called Anna, and she is the innocent.
All people who suffer history are innocent. I think history is a monster. It's something that is really a terror for people, for all of us, and we cannot escape from its griefs. So all people in my book are, in a way, innocent.
What is your mission with this novel?
To save the past.
Ioana, you're going to read a passage from The Innocence, and it's in Romanian, a short passage in Romanian, and it's the passage about the moon landing in 1969.
Transmisiunea, pe care o urmăreau cu sentimente asemănătoare milioane de oameni, n-a fost cine știe ce, drept să spun. Dacă n-am fi știut despre ce-i vorba, nici nu ne-am fi uitat. Eram mult sub serialele de duminică pierduți în spațiu, de exemplu. Un fel de gânganie metalică, niște siluete vagi umflate și neclare, care se mișcau săltat și lent, un steag, parcă, greu de deslușit la televizorul alb-negru. Cu toate astea, cei trei americani, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin și Michael Collins, au devenit eroii noștri. Săptămâni întregi le-am tot repetat numele, la fel cum le repetam pe ale celor 4 Beatles, John, Paul, Ringo, și mereu îl uitam pe George. De altminteri, ar fi meritat și ei Beatlesii noștri să meargă pe lună. Replica lui Armstrong, un pas mic, un pas gigantic, era un fel de Let It Be sau We all live in a yellow submarine.
A yellow submarine?
A yellow submarine.
The broadcast, watched by millions of people who nurtured similar feelings, wasn't all that impressive, to tell the truth. If we hadn't known what it was about, we wouldn't even have watched. It fell far below the standard of the Sunday serials, Lost in Space, for example. Some kind of metal bug, a few blurry, bulging outlines slowly hopping around, a flag, which was quite hard to distinguish on a black and white television set. But despite all that, the three Americans, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin and Michael Collins, became our heroes. For weeks on end, we kept repeating their names, the way we repeated the names of the four Beatles, John, Paul, Ringo, and I always forgot George's name. By rights, our lads, the Beatles, also ought to have deserved a trip to the moon. Armstrong's line about it being one small step, one giant leap was a kind of let it be, or we all live in a yellow submarine. Besides anything else, the spaceman's capsule was a kind of submarine. It wasn't until I grew up that I asked myself what Apollo the sun god was doing on the moon and what the Americans were doing on a Russian television set. Back then, all of us were cosmic children for whom everything in life was still possible and equal. The Innocence by Ioana Pârvulescu, translated by Alistair Ian Blythe and published by someone out there, let's hope. Now, thank you, Ioana, so much for that interview, and that's it from the Romanian Cultural Institute in London.
Thank you, Rosie.
Thank you to today's riveting author. My name's Rosie Goldsmith, and thank you for watching and listening to our riveting interview, conversations with authors from all over the world. You can find our riveting interviews, reads and reviews on our website, eurolitnetwork.com.